Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in today to our Sinclair podcast. My name is Kaitlyn Angeletti, and I'm one of the physician assistants here at Sinclair.
And I'm Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist. I work with Kaitlyn.
So today we're talking about something a little bit different than I think we have in the past. We kind of decided we're going to talk a little bit more about just some common life issues and how those things can really be a big part of behavioral health and mental health, in general. And today we're going to talk a little bit about divorce, divorce and relationships, and how that common thing that I think so many people go through can really have a big impact on their mental health. And what to do about those things. Divorce has become a very common thing in our society, and a lot of times that heartbreak that we go through becomes a very significant part in our mental well-being and how we're able to continue life without that other person. And that's a lot of times when depressions and things like and anxieties and things of that nature can really kind of show their face in times of distress such as divorce.
Well, as you mentioned, Kaitlyn, at least in the United States, over 50% of the marriages end in divorce. And that can be a loss, and as tragic of a loss as the loss of a loved one, of someone who passed away. It's the death of a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of we struggle sometimes to know how to move on, what to do from that moment, and how to go on with yourself or with children that are involved. And everyone's situations are a little bit different, so it's certainly tailored to each individual relationship, but it is such a common thing and such a common precipitator to depression or anxiety or mood instabilities, and that's why I think it's important to kind of recognize when you are going through such a difficult time, what else you can pick up on, and what's a normal reaction to something so significant versus looking into needing some help.
Well, generally, there's some stages. These aren't hard and fast rules. Generally, an individual first is in denial over the end of a relationship. I think two people really know in their hearts well before the final breakup that things are not going well. However, usually a person will deny it and say that everything's okay, everything's all right, I'm okay, you're okay, the name of that book. Then they turn into a phase of anger, and quite often that's the phase that we see people in when they come in here to Sinclair. They're extremely angry and resentful and bitter at that individual, and they can't understand why anyone would associate with that person, why some of their family members still associate with them. And quite often the children at that stage become the messengers, the go-betweens between the parties, and that is not fair to the children, and it results in a great deal of heartache for those folks.
Yeah, definitely. And depending on the ages of the children that are involved, that can be a struggle as well. To what extent do you give details to the children, or do you leave them completely out of it? And how to split up custody and all of those things are just a science in itself, and it's definitely a challenging time, especially when you're not getting along with your significant other, about how to effectively discuss these important matters of how you're going to deal with the kids afterwards, and all of that stuff.
Very, very difficult. And so how we deal with that is everyone has a story to tell, and everyone needs to vent. Um, we do not give advice, we do not give lectures, we do not give sympathy. We empathize with an individual and help that person understand that they have strengths, talents, and abilities. Quite often, we get so enmeshed with others around us, not just a significant other or a partner, that we lose our boundaries on who we are. And we begin to, our own self-concept and self-esteem, we begin to base our own on how others feel about us. We draw our worth from others.
Yeah, absolutely. divorce can definitely be messy, and especially when, you and, like I mentioned, you and your significant other aren't getting along, and, having hurtful things being said to you from someone that you loved for a significant period of time or have children with. I mean, it's very hurtful to hear their opinions or things that are bothering them. And a lot of times we have trouble communicating these things effectively. And I think, with the interpersonal relationship skills that we talk about here, I think can be a huge important part of that whole piece of the puzzle. It's very challenging to overcome a divorce when you're alone. I think it's important to kind of accept when considering therapy or just kind of a counseling to kind of vent and things like that can really be an effective way to do it, because a lot of times we tend to vent to our children because they're there and we're bothered, or we'll vent to our parents. A lot of the people that we like to talk to about these things also have a biased opinion and are struggling on their own with the changes. And sometimes it's nice to be able to have someone else on, the third party perspective that isn't, immediately involved in the situation, that can help kind of guide you to handle things effectively for yourself and for your family.
Well, sure. People who are involved in that situation, it's difficult for them to take a non-judgmental view. And you, as well as I, as everyone here, an individual comes in, and when they describe what the other person is like, if that were true, they'd be in prison. However, what we try to ask individuals is to look at the situation as an outside observer. Try to divorce yourself from, no pun intended, from the situation, and be a non-judgmental outside observer and ask them what they see.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've had breakups in your life. You've had end of relationships, as have I. Tell me how you felt.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's not an easy road to travel. I think, it's definitely normal to go through those emotional stages of a breakup, and especially divorce is a lot more significant than just a normal relationship coming to an end. And it's just a matter of kind of how to pick up the pieces and move on. And I think a lot of times the issue with it is the change. I think a lot of people, my family, I come from a divorced family. I know my sister really struggled with my parents' divorce because of the changes that she didn't anticipate or didn't know. She really is she's just a girl that loves, kind of that unity and, tradition. And, my parents were together for 26 years. And so for her life, she knew everything to be the way that she knew it. And so when things kind of get flipped upside down unexpectedly, that can be really hard to accept. And I think that's kind of the whole brunt of it, is, kind of getting to a space where you can accept the changes and do them in a healthful manner. And, and if you're having trouble accepting these things, and that's another thing to kind of be in tune with, so is it time to reach out, or is there something else going on? And a lot of times, divorce can precipitate or kind of be the foreshadowing to some other things that may have gone on, during your childhood or previous experiences in relationships. That kind of things tend to resurface when divorce happens, and all of that's a really important part of the grieving process as well.
Well, you made an excellent point, Kaitlyn. The ripples from that event of a divorce affects everyone in that circle, not just the two individuals involved. And the final stage is acceptance, where we deal. And acceptance doesn't mean that, well, that's it, and that's the way it's always going to be. Acceptance isn't resignation that my life is always going to be this bad. I'm always going to be alone. What it is it's acceptance that that's the way it is at this moment. That's not the way it's always going to be. And what we always look for in any type of situation is motivation for positive change. So even as tragic as an event, as upsetting as a divorce can be, eventually we help the individual look what would motivate them and what type of positive change they're looking for, and that's the assist that we give.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely recommend keeping your options open for help, when you're going through a tough time such as divorce, and being vocal with your family and being able to kind of have everything out on the table and looking into what's best for you, either individual counseling, family counseling, couples therapy. And it's not unusual for divorced couples to even continue therapies even when they're divorced, just to kind of help co-parent successfully. And just keeping your options open, because so many people are going through such similar circumstances that you don't have to do this alone. And I think that's an important part of the puzzle, because we lose a lot of, as you mentioned before, self-validation and self-worth, when we kind of feel like someone has left us and that something's wrong with us. And a lot of times that's not the case. It's just that two people aren't meshing like they used to. And just recognizing that doesn't necessarily wrong with you or something wrong with that other person. That just means you weren't good together. But I think it's good to keep an open mind with reaching out for help and being vocal.
That's also another excellent point. You feel so alone because your whole life you're very dependent. Some people get really codependent, and then you begin, well, what did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. What's wrong with me? Mm-hmm. How could I have done things better? What can I promise them that I'll do so we'll stay together? Mm-hmm. And that's a self-defeating type of attitude.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard too, because I think in our society nowadays, movies and TV shows and relationships are all kind of painted in a certain light, being very happy and fairy tale type of situations that really isn't our reality. And I think it's just important to have your realistic expectations for yourself and for your relationship, and know when it's appropriate to reach out and kind of get some consultation.
And also what this period of time can be is to begin to reestablish the relationship with yourself. Begin to know who you are, begin to understand yourself, and love yourself, and be compassionate to yourself.
Definitely. So thanks for joining us today, guys. To continue the conversation, please like us on Facebook, plus on Google+, or follow us on Twitter under Sinclair Life, and keep an eye on any of these for our next live recording Mondays around noon to ask your own questions. You can also find this in other Grand Rounds and other videos on youtube.com/Sinclair Video, and find audio versions on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. And please visit www.sinclair.com for more about us and other articles on our great blog.
And as always, be good to yourself. Go fishing.
Go fishing.